So you want to buy an A3 8P? Well, I'm here to tell you why or why you shouldn't buy one. So let's jump right into it. So welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. My name is Ty. If you're new here, consider subscribing. I make lots of 8P content and other Audi content, and soon to be some other stuff as well. Don't forget to smash that like button if you like this video, but I'm just gonna basically give you guys a rundown on a lot of the reasons why you should or shouldn't get your hands on an 8P chassis Audi. So for those of you that are watching this video because you're considering buying one, you've probably done a little bit of research, but there's a lot of things that make this an awesome platform to start jumping into the Euro car community. And the first big main thing being that this A3 is essentially a Volkswagen GTI, and some of you may be interested in a front wheel drive 8P or a Quattro 8P, and the front wheel drive 8P is just a GTI essentially. It uses the exact same engine as the either Mark 5 or Mark 6 GTI, depending on what year 8P you would like. Behind me is my 2012 A3 8P Quattro S line, so I'm basically the top spec that you can get in the last year of the hatchback A3 that came in North America, and in my opinion is one of the best hatchback chassis Audis you can get your hands on for under $20,000. So just by looking at my A3, you can tell that, you know, just aesthetically that my car isn't stock. I have a honeycomb grille, I have upgraded brakes, I've got tint. Some people think that my black roof is aftermarket, but it's not. That's just the way that my A3 came. And as you saw when I pulled the car into the garage at the beginning of the video, I have an aftermarket exhaust and a whole bunch of other goodies, and we'll go over that in a second. So we'll start with the exterior styling of the A3. One of the beautiful things, and you're not going to be able to tell because it is light outside and super sunny, but the facelifted A3, which I have here, which is from 2009 to 2012 or 2013, depending on what part of the world you're in. We got upgraded headlights. Not only that came with HID projectors, but also the LED, we'll call it a boomerang or an eyebrow headlight, which is super sick. It just gives the car a more modern look. As this car is almost 10 years old now, it still looks very modern for its age, which is super awesome. It's got a little bit more of an aggressive look compared to the non-facelifted A3, as it has the fanged bumper with the two fangs and the front little lip splitter that I wouldn't even really consider a splitter at this point. And just the overall general aesthetic of the A3 is definitely, in my opinion, it looks a lot better than the GTI, not only because just the styling is a little bit more aggressive than the GTI, but just because these are getting more and more rare on the road. So you don't see everyone and their mom driving an A3 8P, but with any car, once you buy one, it becomes more obvious and you see them more often because you're used to it. But it's just a really awesome looking car. So as I mentioned with the front headlights, the rear taillights as well are LED, and I'll turn them on. So this is actually one of the first taillights that Audi did with an integrated LED DRL, and a lot of people say that this is one of their actual favorite taillights that Audi ever made, because you have, it's a separated taillight, so it's a two-piece, and it has the LEDs that run through the perimeter of both taillights. Now, unfortunately, it still does use incandescent bulbs for the turn signals and the reverse signals and the brake lights, but the running light looks super cool, and it just is another reason that this design has just kind of become timeless compared to the earlier 8P. So this is the facelift, as I had mentioned, and in my opinion just looks all around a lot better than the GTI. So speaking of the GTI, we're gonna go ahead and pop the hood and look at the engine. Under the hood of the A3, we have the 2-liter T, which in my case is the 2-liter TFSI, which is actually the TSI, so the same engine that comes in the Mark 6 GTI. This car also came with the 2-liter FSI, which came in the Mark 5 GTI, which just has the bigger engine cover that has the integrated intake. You might look at this first glance and be like, oh, this is a different engine, but if you take the engine cover off and you've looked at a Mark 6 GTI engine, it's the exact same. Nothing fancy here. Like I said, my car is modified, so I have R8 coil packs, intake, downpipe, and I run a little bit of ethanol just to make things a little bit extra spicy. But the beautiful thing about having the exact same engine as the GTI is aftermarket support and also used market parts. So the aftermarket support for anything before anything that interferes with drive shaft components is all interchangeable between the GTI and the A3. So this intake could have come off a GTI, coil packs could have come off a GTI, intake could have came off a GTI, turbo could have come off a GTI. It's all interchangeable, which is awesome. So if you break something, you want to go pull something off of a wrecker car and you can't find an A3 anywhere, go ahead and pull it off of a GTI. You can use the exact same parts, which is super awesome. The only difference between the mechanical stuff from the GTI and the A3 is if you have a Quattro, which is what I have. So my downpipe is different and my exhaust routing is different, and then also the car is heavier, so a little bit of the suspension is a little bit different, like the sway bars and the springs, but everything else is 100% interchangeable when it comes to mechanical stuff. So super awesome. Just a little thing that not a lot of people know when they're trying to buy A3 parts. Just makes our lives a little bit easier. And another cool thing too is that since the A3 does have the exact same engine, almost every single tune for the GTI applies to the A3. So if you see people who have stage 1, stage 2, stage 2 plus, stage 3, big turbo upgrades and everything, how much power they make, you can make the exact same horsepower out of your A3, which is super sick. So now coming inside the A3, there's not a lot of really standout-ish features in the A3. You got standard gauge cluster, nothing fancy going on there. Changeable menus, which I guess is kind of cool for some people. You can get a lot of different information out of these. You got your climate control system, which looks a lot different compared to the GTI one. One thing that is a little bit unfortunate about the A3 is that the head units do, in my opinion, look slightly worse than they do in the GTI, and that also comes down to the full-size screen that you can get in the GTI. You can get the RNSE navigation system, which would be extremely outdated anyways at this point. In the A3, mine doesn't have that. That is the only option that I didn't get with my A3, but it's just nothing super major. The Audi concert system that is in my A3 is a 10 speaker system, so it's got 5 up front with 1 being on the dashboard, 4 in the back, and then it also has a stealth subwoofer behind one of the rear panels, which gives this car 10 years down the road amazing sound quality from the stereo, which is awesome if you're younger. Super good sound system that you're not even going to want to be concerned about upgrading. You just have to, unfortunately, run an aux cord, but lots of people still do, so that's fine. So we'll quickly jump back to a little bit more of mechanical stuff. So my car is DSG, which to a lot of people is obviously automatic, but it's technically not an automatic. It's a dual clutch transmission, so it's a manual shifted by a computer, which acts as an automatic. So you have paddle shifters right here, which are super awesome. Shift gears, makes really cool noises if you have an exhaust on the car. I'll throw in a clip here so you guys know what that sounds like. And it's just a super cool feature to have if you like driving around and, giving her the beans. So that's as far as actual features on the interior go. The seats are nothing fancy, and the A3 The rear seats aren't super huge. I've had friends in the back that are 6 feet tall that say that they're comfortable in the back, but you already know that it's not super great. I'm 6 feet tall and my head is already about probably 3 or 4 inches away from the roof in the A3, so if you're a taller person, an A3 probably isn't going to be something super comfortable for you to drive, but it's comfortable for me because I like smaller cars anyways. But if you're a bigger person, that's just something to consider, and obviously before you buy a car, you're going to want to test drive it anyways, so just make sure you do that. Trunk space in the A3, not super large. I would say it's probably a little bit smaller than the GTI's trunk. So it's definitely just a little bit smaller. And as I was saying, that stealth subwoofer is actually just behind this panel on the left-hand side here, and it does the job, so super awesome. Doesn't have automatic opening or anything, so you gotta lift your tailgate, but it's a hatch, so don't know what else you would expect. We'll jump back to a little bit more mechanical stuff real quick. Underneath the A3, as I mentioned, I am Quattro, so right over here is my differential. The differential on the Quattro in the rear is actually a Haldex rear end. So with a Haldex, basically what it does is it controls how much power is going to your rear wheels and isn't 50-50 all-wheel drive all the time like a Subaru or mechanical Quattro. So on the highway and when you're cruising, this car actually most of the time is front wheel drive. Now, when you go to launch this car or you're accelerating really hard, that's when the Quattro kicks in, or if you're like me and you do snow drifts, that's when the Quattro is absolutely fantastic in this car. And that's one of the big reasons that I actually ended up getting the Quattro over the front wheel drive, is just because to have that extra ability to, you know, get through mud, get through snow, just feel a lot safer when you're cornering in the rain and that kind of thing is a really big factor. If you're considering getting an A3, maybe try and get a Quattro if the price difference isn't that much, or if someone doesn't know what they have. And that being said, this all-wheel drive system technically isn't even Quattro, because a lot of people will say that Quattro only existed when things were mechanical, which in a sense is true, but it's cool because the all-wheel drive and the Haldex and everything in the A3 is the exact same for the Mark 6 Golf R. So same Haldex, same all-wheel drive system, which is super cool. So you've got a little bit of performance stuff going on under there aside from a stock GTI engine. So we're gonna go over some of the common problems and things to look for when you're buying one of these cars. We're gonna go from highest severity and just kind of work our way down to like nitpicky things. So this is all from like my personal experience and like stuff that I've read online in the forums and from other people on YouTube and issues that they've had with their cars. So the first one pertains specifically to me, and this is an issue I've been tackling on and off for a couple of months now that we're constantly working on trying to solve, and that is issues with the DSG. Now, in the early 2010s, the Mark 5 and the Mark 6 GTI and some of the Golfs got introduced to the DSG transmission, which is that dual clutch I was talking about, and the A3 actually has that exact same transmission. It's called the DQ250. So the DQ250 is one of the very, I wouldn't say very early, but early DSGs that were put into a lot of different Audis and Volkswagens and Skodas and like a whole bunch of other Volkswagen Auto Group cars in Europe. And the unit that controls the pressure and the gear selection and the gear changing is called the mechatronics unit, and it's this big like book looking thing that connects to the front of the transmission. Now sometimes this unit can fail in a multitude of different ways, but when it fails, that's the big huge problem that you're going to run into with the DSG versions of the A3. Now mine throws what it's called a transmission fluid low pressure light, and it's really shitty because this issue that comes up won't come up as a check engine light. So I have an OBD11, or if you don't know what an OBD11 is, it's basically a super advanced OBD reading software that you can use on your phone that you plug into the OBD port on Volkswagens, Audis, and a whole bunch of European cars, and it'll tell you anything you want to know about your car. You can do coding and like all that stuff, and that's the only way you're going to be able to tell if this car has that issue. It won't show up as a check engine light. You probably won't even be able to tell just from driving if it has this issue. It might feel a little bit jerky when you're driving it, especially when you first start going in a DSG car. If it lurches as you first start and then grabs again and then starts going, that might be a sign that you're running into mechatronics problems or you have low DSG fluid pressure. So that's a big one to keep in mind. So the next one is a multitude, or it's two different things. So since the A3 is a European car, more specifically a Volkswagen, these cars are relatively high maintenance. One of the things that might still be covered under warranty for certain A3s, depending on their year and how old they are, is their timing chains sometimes will stretch due to tensioner failure. This is covered under a class action lawsuit, actually, so it's not so much of a negative thing, because at the end of the day, if your engine does fail due to timing chain tensioning or just anything to do with the timing chain, your car should be covered under this class action lawsuit. But that kind of transitions from just the timing chain into how your car was taken care of, and that should come down to any car you purchase. If your car wasn't taken care of very well and there's signs of abuse, it's leaking from everywhere, things aren't working properly, stuff is broken, that's just a car you don't want to touch, because especially if you're looking to get an A3 that is Quattro, you have many other things that have regular service intervals than just the front wheel drive, and that being the Haldex and the rear differential. And the Haldex fluid needs to be done at the same time as the DSG, so basically every 60,000 kilometers and whatever that is to miles. And then your diff fluid needs to be changed at some point. I don't remember what the interval for that one is. But then you also have your DSG fluid needs to be changed as well. Obviously, and regular engine oil intervals, I do mine every 8,000 kilometers, and then I use different types of oil depending on what season I'm in and like that kind of thing, but that's just me. I'm very nitpicky. And then obviously spark plugs need to be done. Coil packs are becoming actually basically a consumable product, because especially if you tune these cars, they like to blow coil packs very, very, very quickly, and that's why I have upgraded to the R8 coil packs, as we saw at the beginning of the video. Yeah, so it's just very important that you either have access to the service information for these cars, the history is relatively good so there aren't big gaps in servicing, or you're buying it from someone that just, you know, shows signs of how much they've taken care of the car that you're trying to buy. Be very careful when you're buying these cars if you're going to buy them from a used car dealership. These cars are very easy to cover up. You know, same thing when it comes to buying from a used car dealership. If it's over detailed, the engine bay is all dressed up, there's probably something more going on than what meets the eye, so just be very, very careful. Another, I wouldn't say this is a very big thing, but this has been mentioned by many other YouTubers and other content creators, or just people in general that have A3s. That issue is there are a lot of sensors in this car. There are a lot of fail-safe things, a lot of whistleblowers, so something could be very, very minutely out of value or out of spec, and that's going to give you a fault in the car somewhere. A big one that I regularly have is that my car seems to think that my rear defog does not work. Defog or defrost or whatever you want to call it. It seems to think mine doesn't work. Mine works perfectly fine. It comes on the switch, the light turns on, it defrosts my back window, but the car seems to think it doesn't work. I don't know why. No fuses are broken, no relays are broken. It just gives me the code anytime I scan the car, and it's just one of those things. So there's lots of sensors in this car, a lot of stuff, but can just give you a code for basically literally anything. So be prepared to have lots of codes for random stupid little things that your car either doesn't even have installed or works, but your car doesn't think it works, which is really, really dumb. So we're just going to get into a little bit of like nitpicky things that I noticed that have happened in my 2 years of ownership of the A3. That being, a lot of things in this car creak, like they make noise. That's normal, you know, it's a Volkswagen. Anyone that knows anything about any Volkswagens is their plastics aren't super fantastic and they do wear out. Like my door grip squeaks. One of my B pillar on this side, one of the clips in there sometimes vibrates if my music is too loud, or if at like certain RPMs with my exhaust. Just little things. That comes down to also my visor clip broke one day when I was trying to open this. They're super cheap to replace, so it's not really a big deal, but it's just one of those things. It's like Volkswagen plastic just has a notoriously bad reputation for how crappy it is. I haven't broken anything else on this interior. You know, I load tires and wheels in here. I haven't snapped anything, nothing's broken, there's no creases in anything. My seats have held up really good, which is, I guess, another thing that the bolstering, and I won't show you because I'm actually sitting in the driver's seat, but the bolstering on the butt portion of the driver's seat right around here likes to crack and get really creased. So it's just something that you need to maintain and make sure that you're taking care of the leather in your car, because the A3, I don't even think comes with cloth, and the leather is just a billion times better. Anyways, but yeah, that's about it. I really don't have any complaints about the A3. It's probably one of the better cars that I've owned in my entire life, and I think I've had like 12 or 13 cars since I was 16 years old. So I've had my fair share in the car world, and this has probably been the best one so far. Like it's built really well. I don't have a lot of mechanical issues. The only issues that I have are caused by myself because I like to mod stuff. But if you keep one of these cars stock and you just need it as a daily driver, it's honestly a super good car. I can get, if I'm really nice to it on 91 octane, I can get close to 700 kilometers on a tank if I'm really like babying the crap out of it. But I'm tuned, I run ethanol, I still get 550 kilometers to about I think it's a 55 liter tank or something like that, so just under 10 liters per 100 kilometers, which is pretty good for a little bit of abuse that this car sees. But all around, the A3 8P chassis is a pretty fantastic car if you can get it for the right price. I'm not sure what the prices are these days, but I'll put some stuff up on the screen kind of showing you the A3 versus the GTI, and then the A3 Quattro versus the GTI, and just what the price differences are where I live. I know they're pretty similar, but just for the amount of extra stuff and that Audi quality that you get out of the A3, I definitely think it is something that you should get your hands on if you're considering, you know, a GTI or an A3. Yeah, super fantastic car. But that'll probably about do it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this and found the little bit of information that I have up in my brain from the ownership of my A3 useful. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Check out some of my other videos if you're wanting to buy an A3 and mod it. I do lots of A3 stuff. I also have an Audi Allroad that I'm building to go off-roading with, and some other vehicles hopefully coming pretty dang soon. And I appreciate every single one of you that checked out this video today. Don't forget to smash like if you liked it. But that'll about do it. Peace out, guys. I'll see you in the next video.